everybody, welcome back to another deck profile video. We're back after a long break, here to bring you the only viable Dark Stage deck, right? No, I'm kidding, there's more viable Dark Stage deck, but this is definitely one that has been performing quite nicely. That is Blangdmire Nexus. Now, with Blangdmire Nexus, you still play the original Blangdmire in the right lane. It tries to OTK your opponent on turn 4 by using its Divine skill, which is a really cool mechanics they gave Divine decks. We'll start off with a simple right lane. We have our grade 0, 1, 2, and 3. The grade 1 and 2 have very similar effects. They let you reveal top 3 of your deck, and then put all grade 1 or higher cards into your soul. If you put 2 or more, you get a draw. Now the big difference here is that with the grade 1, you put it to the bottom of the deck, while with the grade 2, you shuffle the deck. Then there is Blangdmire himself. He lets you bind 2 or more cards, up to 4, but usually you want to bind 4 cards because you want to get as many cards in your bind zone as possible. And then you get a draw and plus 5k power for every 2 cards in your bind zone. Another reason why getting that number in your bind zone up is really important. You also get to bind 2 of your opponent's rearguard. It's their choice, however, but they get bound face down, meaning they can't touch it, they can't really interact with it at all. Unless you're playing a mirror match, you know, if you're playing a mirror match, I guess they can. Blangdmire Nexus. Now Nexus is your turn 4 right target, it's your persona right, it also inherits the same name as the original, and it gives your front row rear guards plus 5k if you have the original in your soul, or himself. A very interesting detail is that he wants his own name in soul, which would count the original and himself since he also is the original in name. Then where the original is on attack, this one is an act skill, so you can do it during the main phase. So as an act skill, you get to bind 4 cards from your soul face down, and then afterwards you either draw a card or call a card from your face down bind zone and get similar plus 5k power for every 2 face down. Different from the original is that you can also bind a Blangdmire for the full effect, which helps you if the game goes really long and you're running out of soul. The important part here is to always keep in mind that you need the original Blangdmire in soul in order for Nexus to inherit its divine skill. You know, and then you might think, what's a divine skill? Well, let me explain. A divine skill is a once per fight skill that you can use once the requirements are met. There's 12-ish divine skills, there might be a little more. All the fated and destined ones have it. Essentially with Blangdmire's divine skill, if you have 8 or more face down cards in your bind zone, you get to delete end your opponent completely and utterly. You negate their Vanguard abilities, not their names, skills, icons, whatever, just their abilities, which means there's no more double drive or triple drive if they have it. They don't have their axe and continuous skills, all of that stuff, but they still, have their power, their name, their traits, all that as an added effect. And that's kind of where the deck, gets its main win con from, is that your opponent cannot use perfect guards until the end of the turn. Well, the end of the opponent's turn, but they're not calling a PG during their own turn to defend themselves, are they? Also, their fighter skills are negated, so if you're fighting a Rezal who used his divine skill, anything like that, they're also negated. They can, however, regain those skills or gain extra skills on top of it if they persona ride, or if they have any effects that give your Vanguard or fighters extra skills. But yeah, that's the main gimmick of the deck. You try to really push out as much bind to increase your power, and then try to punch him really hard in that one divine skill turn to try and finish out the game. Next up, we're going to go over Colossus. He's a really good piece. So soul charging or his own effect, you gotta bind him instead and get a draw. And when he attacks, he gets plus 10k, and at the end of the battle, you can put him into soul. So that's really neat. It's a draw piece. If you soul charge it, if you attack with it, it's a solid card. You could play 4, especially once that 10 comes out and you try to run the ultra mega supercharged build, where you run the clown too, to try and really accelerate that bind count and get you up as high as possible, as quickly as possible. You can push him up to 4. Then your Regalis piece of choice. In my case, I'm running Bracing Angel Ladder. I don't really have another one, but this card has also saved me so many times for giving me the extra soul that I needed that maybe I don't want to play another one. It's obviously also really strong into matchups like Artisaria, mass retired decks such as Bafsagara or Varga or anything like that, giving you plus 1 soul because he puts himself into soul, a draw, and a turn protection. Really solid effect. Next up, we're going to go over the grade 2 of the deck. First, we're going to talk about the Ace unit. Okay, you know, ace units are a new mechanic they added in the festival collection. They are really wonderful cards, but they can only be used once per fight, and you can only include one copy per deck, very similar to the Regallus piece. Now this guy lets you Energy Blast 3, you get plus 5k, and you get to check top 7 to put a card from deck into soul, and then call out a card from your soul with a grade less than or equal than your Vanguard. This is basically like a 5th copy of one of your other cards that I'll talk about in a minute. It builds you field, it calls out your Philias, it calls out Vadrocks, you know, whatever you want it to do. It's very functional, very multifunctional. On attack you also get another plus 5 if you're fighting a grade 3, and if you have 5 or more soul, you get another plus. All in all, this is a wonderful inclusion to the deck, and you should, you know, really pick this up. It's a really good card. Just make sure to remember that it does not have 5k shield, so that's one of the downsides to the card. I have 2 cards that I kind of have to talk about together. It's the Game of the Underworld and the Sagacious Schemer. Now these two are a pair, you know, peas in a pod. The Sagacious Schemer lets you, for Soul Blast 1, play the Game of the Underworld from the deck, and then if he's chosen by an order, he gets plus 5k in the back row. Now how does that function with the Game of the Underworld? Well, the Game of the Underworld is the start of battle phase. You gotta select a rear guard, and that thing gets boost. So if you're combining these two, you already have a 15k booster, potentially on turn 2, which is really sweet. Now, why do we really run this? Because we're trying to OTK people here. We're not nice people when we play this deck. As such, we play 4 copies of Vadrock. Now, Vadrock is the quintessential piece to this deck. It is by far the best card in this entire deck. He gets plus 10k for every 4 cards in Bind Zone, so he becomes massive in numbers. And on place, you have to Soul Charge 1, and then you can Counterblast 1, call out a unit from your soul, a grade 2 or less rear guard, which is, you know, perfect because you can call out your Philias, you can call out your Zamu, you know, whatever you need to build a field. That is also synergized really well with Blangdmire Nexus, because if you have one of these guys in your bind zone, you call them out, and you know, builds you a field for you. Really solid card. Now why does this synergize so well with the boost order? Well, you can put this guy behind our next card to make a really big column during your Divine Skill turn. Our next card is Zamoog. Now, Zamoog is your resource engine, finisher, extra push power. He does a lot of things for you. On place, you can Counterblast 1 to check the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can put in as many cards as you want. That's really neat, right? You need soul, you can just ram all 3 of them in. No regard for anything, but if you want to soul charge those triggers, you don't have to. Then you shuffle the deck, and if you put in at least 1 card from there, you get a draw. So, you know, another draw. We really like draws. Having hand size is really important, getting another piece in there. Now what makes him such a good finisher? On attack, you can Energy Blast 3 to get plus 5k and a crit. Now that added crit pressure is only if you don't already have a crit. So that's important. You don't want to, you know, give him a crit when you check out your Vanguard. You probably want to move it to the other column. But yeah, usually if you use Vadrock and Zamoog together on your Divine Skill turn, it's like a 60k column, 70k column, whatever, how many bind zones you have. It's really solid. Next up, run 4 PGs. It wouldn't be a Vanguard deck if we didn't play PGs, right? Can't go without them. Even though we kind of disable them ourselves, we still want to play them against other people. Next up, 4 copies of Philia. Philia is a manga promo, a really good card. It's pretty much your Shendry, your dog, you know, those pretty much a clone of those cards. On boost, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, or you play an order this turn, so either your Regallus piece or your boost order, you can get plus 5k and then end of battle go into soul for a draw. If you call Philia from Vadrock early game, you can just push it back in for an instant draw. Really strong, especially considering Vadrock can only keep the card that he called out on board if he's on a Blangdmire Vanguard. We run 2 copies of Evoke Alchemist. This is our dedicated booster of the deck. Essentially he gets plus 7k when boosting a Blangdmire. He gets plus 5 if he doesn't boost Blangdmire. And when you boost Blangdmire, you can Counterblast 1 to restand something if you have 4 or more bind. And if you have 8 or more bind, you give that thing that you restood plus 15k. So when you restand that Zamoog with plus 15k, you know, things can get out of hand real quick. If you're swinging with 75, 85, whatever amount of power at your Vanguard and they can't PG, you better hope they have an over trigger or some crazy defensive orders or something like that, or you know, you can pretty much grab their cards together and scoop it up. Then as our final unit in the deck, we have Elaborate Wizard. Elaborate Wizard was also included in the Nexus wave of support. He's another resource gain card, really. On play, you can look at top 2 to put a card from there into Soul. The other one goes to the bottom of the deck. Then his other effect is when you, at the end of the battle, you boosted, you can bind him for a counterblast and then add a card from Soul back to hand. Really useful, and lets you toolbox out things from Soul, things you're missing, things you need. Maybe you accidentally soul charge that, you know, Nexus and you need it back, or you just want a PG that you soul charged in. It's all possible here with this card, and it, you know, it adds a sense of consistency that this deck didn't have before, in that, you know, you can actually get your pieces back from your soul, which is wonderful. Then to finish off deck profile, of course, we go over the triggers. Your player OT of choice. In my case, I'm running the Dark States over trigger. If you check this early, you pretty much automatically win the game. I feel like you just have a plus 10k on Vanguard, where your Vanguard already being as difficult as it is to guard. And having that crit on every, you know, big boy swing. Very strong. You can of course play another over trigger, such as the blue OT or the red OT. Both have their, you know, functions. With the red OT being able to restand your crit gainer, or, you know, do things during your divine skill turn, or maybe they could guard 1 but not 2 attacks. Next up, we are running 8 critical triggers. You know, you want to try to crit as much as possible during our divine skill turn, and early game if we can push some more damage, we definitely want to try. So that's why we're running 8 criticals. Then we run 4 heal triggers. You know, any deck runs 4 heals, right? And then, you know, the current meta of things is running the remaining 3 front triggers. Now, I do feel like this deck kind of plays itself. You want to, you know, get as much bind zone as possible and try to, you know, play a clever game with Vanguard. Just try to, you know, out resource and then try to just divine skill at the right moment. You don't always have to instantly divine skill on turn 4. Sometimes you may want to wait a turn on turn 5 when they, you know, maybe they're not at 1 damage because they double healed last turn, something like that. You know, you kind of need to see when the optimal time the divine skill is. You know, the longer you wait, the more resources they can potentially stack up. At the same time, you also stack up a lot more bind zone that way. So it's a double-edged sword. I really personally like this deck. I took it to the last BCS in France, the BSF, sorry. And it was a really good time. I had a lot of fun with all my matches. I think this is a, you know, a solid deck for anyone who just wants to, you know, not really worry too much about things and just swing face. There's a lot of, you know, simplicity in it. There's a bit of resource management with how much soul and bind you have. At the end of the day, really what it comes down to is just trying to make big numbers and play clever resource game, trying to OTK your opponent in your divine skill turn. If they live that, you know, hopefully they don't have much left, unless, you know, the worst happens and they check over trigger, right? But at that point, it's out of your hands, man. You did what you could, and that's just gonna be Vanguard, isn't it? Well, I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions about the deck list, about how Blangdmire performs and plays, please leave them down in the comments below. I'm sure to try to respond to any one of you. And until next time, bye bye.